Gravity rarely makes a sound, but on Echelon-9 it sings. The classroom docks unlocked one at a time, hissing a pressure equalization routine more common in starship airlocks than lecture halls. The lessons were held in a sphere rather than lines, function over tradition. The designers had wanted every species to feel their inner ear stay calm. Different atmospheres could coexist only if curvature treaties were constantly renegotiated by the central gravity harmonizer core. Desks floated without drifting, suspended by hair-thin grav filaments that shimmered only when mass changed abruptly. The desks were not placed on the floor. The floor was for walking. The desks were for defining status. The ranking hierarchy, displayed above the entry arch in shifting xenon blue glyphs, was brutal in its simplicity. Seat allocation equals diplomatic wait times physiology tolerance. If any of those variables were deemed unproven, the result was the same, rear placement. Cadet Aria Kane arrived earlier than most. Punctuality was a habit formed the old-fashioned way, waking up on time, showing up, doing the work. The registry drones swarmed her briefly for ID confirmation. The drones were nickel-black, smooth, emotionless, like oversized metallic insects whose wings never touched air but still carried them forward on local anti-grav. They spoke in data stream pulses, not words. Cadet Scholar hashtag 7281TA recognized. Species, human. No welcome parade. No escort squad. No special aisle. The drones parted. Protocol complete. Aria walked to the back row, single backpack over one shoulder, boots magnetically neutral on the walkway panels, body perfectly relaxed inside a 3.9G classroom zone that pushed heavily against most occupants but felt like a firm handshake to her. She sat. The chair adjusted. The AI marked no concern. Humans were not rare applicants here, but they were quiet mysteries in the eyes of those who never studied planetary evolution. Earth's gravity signature placed its transfers among the strongest physiology brackets. Yet raw strength didn't translate into social currency. On Echelon-9, silence was often interpreted as doubt rather than calculation. Misinterpretations fueled conflicts long before fists did. A sharp-featured Silverax shell form seated 2 desks ahead turned slightly, gears of its breathing grid clicking like a clock made of segmented steel. "You're new?" the shell form asked. Its voice was a modulated synth baritone with a faint metallic whistle. "No," Aria answered, tone normal, one syllable efficient. "Transferred midterm." The shell form nodded. "Your planet's spec file claims 9.8 local acceleration constant. That high?" "It's usual," Aria said, pulling out her notebook. "We adapt." That answer moved no other reaction in the room. No emotional garnish added. Simply facts holding a conversation upright. The Institute was known for clashes of privilege. Drex Varlo would arrive soon. You could hear him before you could see him. Not because gravity announced him, but because he announced himself to gravity. Footsteps boomed faintly on the grav-plated walkway, intentionally amplified by his species' boots. They were built for intimidation performance, fitted with mass-resonant enhancers that triggered small floor vibrations to announce pedigree. Drex liked announcements that required witnesses. His horns cleared the arched entryway by centimeters. A height flex of biology and ego equally matched. His aide Krell Tanis, shorter, jittery, following behind, carried a recording pad. Pads like these were common, tiny floating tablets that recorded and categorized student interactions for reputation analytics, academic challenges, social jeers, and ritual disputes. Most species used them for documentation. Drex used them as leverage. Drex dropped into the front middle desk, reserved for high-mass dignitary tolerance bipeds. The AI read his mass signature and adjusted the local contract clauses around him. The desks around Drex were calibrated to a smooth 2.2G curve to keep methane and oxygen species stable under his personal mass territory influence. The Institute didn't deny him clearance. It simply didn't grant him monopoly over everyone else's lungs. A Silurian student chirped a greeting. "Drex Varlo, heir of Korgon Stride Line, protocol favors you today?" A protocol doesn't favor, Drex grinned, claws tapping his desk. It obeys rankings. Another student chuckled. And humans? Krell nudged Drex nervously. Drex nudged back harder. Humans obey instructions, or so we hope. Makes class easier for the superior species. Drex angled his pupils toward Aria. Sharp, purposeful, like a political speech aimed through the wrong telescope. Aria felt the gaze, but gravity didn't pay pupils much attention. Intentional mass shifts did. Professor Heir activated his lecture glyph halo manually, not waiting for full class quorum. He was tall, composed, aura bright from luminary robes that were white not from fashion but from radiation tolerance filament weave. Luminary instructors grew up in light-dense star regions where visual biology developed selectively. They didn't shout. Shouting ionizes air unpredictably. Ionized air misfiles species lungs. Misfiles lead to expulsion. Expulsion leads to paperwork. Paperwork insults instructors. Heir gestured. Desks rethreaded grav contracts automatically for entry calibration. Lesson begins, Heir intoned, voice controlled with calm academic certainty. No species performance. Only curvature constants. Drex chuckled quietly, internally amused, externally unimpressed. Luminari always speak like they're compressing lung cycles. They are, the shell form near him murmured. Curvature complaints filed by sound. You should try silence once. No, Drex answered, tapping his boots lightly so they rumbled. Silence wastes witnesses. The professor's robes flickered softly in grav-tolerance lighting. The speckled xenon blue of star nebula visible through the glass arc panel behind the core shimmered like a constant cosmic heartbeat, indifferent to species politics. Heir launched diagrams into the air. Floating harmonic physics glyphs describing curvature vectors, treaty loads, mass compensation brackets, orbital gravimetrics, subatomic curvature axis modeling, time differential gravlocks, and multiverse safety nets that prevented accidental singularity collapse unless protocol was explicitly breached. He spoke. The desks listened. The core pulsed obedience. Your species profiles, Heir said, gaze sweeping the class, must not interact physically out of ritual boundaries. Gravity respects biology, not hierarchy. Hierarchy is biology, Drex murmured back loud enough for Aria to hear. The professor barely lifted a brow. Incorrect argument, Cadet Varlo. Correct audience, Professor Ashera, Drex retorted with a smirk. Aria wrote, not lifting gaze yet, quiet and efficient, mapping curvature treaties directly through her planetary physics specialization training. Her silence wasn't fear. It was bandwidth conservation. She learned faster when others talked too much. The desks around humans didn't need methane or ion feeds. They simply needed oxygen. But oxygen isn't negotiable peacefully if individuals weaponize desks and gravity simultaneously. Half the class was a potential diplomatic incident. Only one person there actually understood the curvature contract override authority beyond the sphere, Aria Kane. But no one knew that yet. They didn't rank her for it. She didn't care for ranking. She cared for accuracy. Krell whispered, confidence growing, turning his recording pad gently toward Aria. This may go political. We need logs. It's already logged, Aria whispered efficiently, not raising tone. Drex grinned at the contradiction. Logged by drones. Interpreted by species heirs. Interpretations don't affect physics, Aria murmured, closing a chapter quietly inside her notebook only, not verbally. You speak physics often, Kane, the shell-form student asked, tone curious, not mocking. Aria packed her pen carefully. We measure it first. Language later. Logically, Chapter 1 ends here, species conflict seated, protagonist calm, antagonist loud, environment defined, assumptions intact, gravity treaties running silently, and the real reversal not yet triggered. For now, Earth transfers sit quietly. For now, Drex performs dominance rituals. For now, the protocol doesn't understand the mistake it will soon make by incentive design. Classroom is stable. The desks are not. And no one has touched Aria Kane's desk, yet. Echelon-9's classrooms didn't reset often. When they did, it meant someone misjudged the laws. The lecture was flowing into gravitation harmonics when Drex tilted it deliberately into contempt territory. The man thrived not on theory, but reaction. He believed education was a ladder and intimidation was the elevator. Aria believed it was math, nothing more. The moment Drex rose from his seat, the room's atmospheric stabilizers glowed pale amber. They measured behavior spikes without emotion. Drex triggered many. Aria triggered none. Drex sauntered down the aisle, tail sweeping in dramatic arcs. Professor, since gravity's a treaty, let's see if the treaty honors someone from a real world. HFY paused mid-diagram, turning fully now. Cadet Varlo, protocol doesn't honor dramatics. It honors authorization and mass limits. Return to your seat. But intimidation is legal in ritual cadence zones, Drex countered, boots tapping heavier. Yes, the professor replied flat and final, but not at another species' desk quadrant without consent. Drex smiled like consent was an invitation. He didn't ask for permission the traditional way. He forced it the Empire way. He reached Aria's desk, leaned down, and tapped his battle claws against the floating grav-stabilized surface. The desks were engineered for endurance, if you activated them right. Aria knew this. Drex only hoped she didn't. What's your field clearance, Kane? Drex asked, voice low but engineered to broadcast through microgrid amplifiers. Classified, Aria answered, tone casual, movement calm. Still enrolled. Not for long if Earth keeps sending unranked transfers, Drex sneered. His aide, Krell Tanis, hovered nearby, recording pad already live. A Gargan student from the front hissed softly, eyes widening. He's starting a cadet disposition tag, but why at her desk? Because tags move slow, Drex whispered without turning, and public embarrassment moves faster. The pad floated closer. Professors ignored pads. Diplomats feared their algorithms. Drex lived inside them. Drex pressed both palms onto Aria's desk, not violently, but assertively. Slow enough to dodge a hard disciplinary breach. Hard enough to test her reaction pattern and long curve. Every desk filament blazed. The room's treaty AI scrambled to reconcile multi-species mass shifts occurring at a biological singularity point too close to the core. The core flickered. The desks quivered. The air tasted like a treaty about to be renegotiated. What's happening with the core? Krell asked aloud, eyes jumping between readings. The pad buzzed its own confusion. One Silurian leaned out and chirped, pressure spike abnormal. Drex, retract. Relax, Drex said, amusement carrying his breath. The Academy allows projected dominance so long as no physical hostility transfer occurs. The class didn't laugh now. The sound of flickering gravity doesn't beg for humor. The central gravity harmonizer course suddenly surged upward by 0.02 radians. A microscopic contraction, not liberty. It was mass compensation for Drex. But treaty logic isn't written for emotionally unbothered humans. Drex didn't understand why Aria didn't gasp until he watched her lungs literally reject diplomacy as a variable. Her chair clicked firmer into place. Her breathing remained linear. No stress arc. No emotional delta. No protocol instability marker satisfied. The only instability here came from Drex's assumptions. Take your hands off, Aria murmured at a normal conversational volume. You don't dictate treaties, Drex scoffed, treaties dictate you. They do, Aria said, eyes drifting toward the gravity display glyphs above the core, but they can't read humans well. What makes you say that? Professor Selnyr asked from the center of the sphere, stepping toward them, first in curiosity, then concern, matching Aria's subtle mass territory calibration zone to perceive signals rather than air theatrics. My planet taught us gravity tolerance without glyphs, Aria answered without turning, Because the floor held the lesson, not machines. Drex laughed when her words didn't escalate emotion spikes. That laughter filed itself into the pad analytics log automatically. The pad dinged. Disposition Cascade winner, Drex Varlo. Drex's grin widened. His aide looked nauseous. Then Aria Kane spoke again, not emotionally charged, but authorized. Adaptive treaty override on Drex axis quadrant, non-fatal correction, calibration clause executed. Silence filled the sphere like an aftershock. The desk saw legality. Drex saw mockery. Aria saw leverage. The override didn't smash the protocol. It exploited his mistake gracefully, with permissions. The pressure zone around Drex inverted like a contract clause flipping signatures. His boots lifted 5 centimeters off the far medical tolerance zone floor. His tail stiffened involuntarily. Not fear. Not pain. Just unauthorized levitation. What is, why am I, Drex choked out, suddenly no longer self-broadcasting. Because you touched, Aria answered quietly, a desk assigned to someone who didn't sign your ritual. Krell shrieked, the core treaty is identifying the touch as a consent request. Drex, undo it. It can't be undone, Professor Sel-Nyr said, graph floor shifting under his boots, seizing authority now that a physical territory breach, not ritual, not drama, but unauthorized desk contact, was registered legally. Drex struggled silently, claws reaching for floor panels that refused to help someone mid-treaty override. Aria's localized gravity curve didn't punish. The protocol itself relocated him socially by treaty law as long as no emotional instability attached to the override clause. Earth uses bare equations, Drex, Aria murmured while closing her notebook. That's why I didn't get expelled, even when class tag said you won. Students in every breathing gas format gasped for different reasons: methane, ion rads, oxygen impurities, carbon-heavy exhales mismatching shock. That chaotic conversation actually stabilized the room unintentionally more than the central core did. Drex's pad analytics log trembled, ethically and algorithmically, identifying a treaty breach not by raised voice, but by lack of reaction entirely, a paradox the recording AI had to accept socially. You humans are calm until you punch, Drex whispered after finally regaining floor contact authorization as the core stabilized itself around Aria's quadrant, authority re-ranked by exoplanet tolerance, species respect pending. No, Aria answered while standing for the first time, we punch only when we've already won without it. For now, Drex recovers his social algorithm reputation faltering. For now, Aria Kane is still enrolled. And for now, Echelon-9's treaty core begins a slow cultural carve into alien society. Humans don't cause protocol resets. They simply survive them, and rewrite classrooms by authorization. The infirmary smelled of antiseptic and wounded pride. Echelon-9's recovery wing was a cold cathedral of glass, steel, and silent machinery orbiting a nebula that glimmered like bruised galaxies. The walls weren't white, they were reflective. Every visitor saw themselves doubled in infinite symmetry. Most avoided looking for long. Drex avoided it entirely. His Korgon physiology was resilient, but embarrassment wasn't a biological stat you could armor plate. The med drones tended to his corrections efficiently. No accusation. No emotion. Only calibrated medical certainty. The pad that had recorded his antics hours earlier rested on a floating magnetic tray like a judge waiting for a verdict. Krell Tanis stood beside Drex's bed, anxiety starting small battles across his face. Krell, Drex rasped, horns low against the clinical pillow. Status? Stable, Krell said, swallowing hard. Physically, you'll walk. Socially. A pause that felt longer than gravity deserved. We have hearings. Drex blinked once. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't attack. She overreached curvature protocols. The logs disagree, Krell whispered, tapping the pad tray gently so Drex could see. You touched her desk first. The AI marked it as consent. Not intimidation. Drex tried sitting up, but sharp luminary education regulations were already curling through diplomatic channels like slow-burning supernovas. A desk isn't sovereignty. It was, Professor Selen-Wyar corrected from the infirmary archway, stepping in as if the station dimmed the universe around him only slightly, equal parts authority and exhaustion. Until you asked protocol-grade questions while placing your palms on another cadet's allocated surface. Drex winced. That hurt more than the curvature differential. You're saying the classroom misread the situation? No, Selen-Wyar said, robes barely shifting in grav-still ambience, species equality burning quietly through his tone. I'm saying you misread the cadet. Aria Kane entered moments later. Not escorted. Not announced. Simply present. Her boots clicked normally on the walkway panels. No amplifiers. No mass hype theatrics. The pressure zone around her lungs was regulated by the station AI automatically now. No compensation clauses necessary. Gravity recognized her presence like an equation, not a treaty needing negotiation. Drex stared at her for the first time without posture dominance. You enjoy humiliation, Kane? I enjoy accuracy, Aria answered, sitting in the infirmary visitor chair without adjusting her 1.0 default graph clearance, a courtesy the station AI didn't need from her. And harmed privileges don't need joy. They need correction. Students watching from outside the glass recovery wing emitted low whispers like dying quasars. She's still enrolled, a synth chirp voice said from the hall's external window, Silurian tone cloaked in awe. Why not expelled after gravity spike manipulation? Because, another alien murmured, methane exhaling slow static adhesion formats, protocol obeys authorization. Not drama. The administrator AI projected Drex's hearing summons above his bed tray. Notice, Diplofizz Quadrant Touch Cascade Hearing Bullet Operator 1400 hours local orbital standard. Drex groaned low. 1400 hours? They didn't even give me court grade timing. That's afternoon lectures hour. Lectures hour is diplomatic, Drex, Krell murmured, rubbing his temples. Diplomacy bends based on interpretation. But logs don't. And logs don't like arrogance. Selen-Wyar sighed as Aria stood and approached the pad tray, her optic lenses reflecting Drex and herself both once inside the curvature display symmetry glitch range. Drex saw his reflection briefly, Aria saw frequencies. Professor Selen-Wyar tapped the central glass recovery panel domain display, stabilizing final hearings for the gravity core that had flickered earlier into near-soft reset malfunction territory. Its protocols were ancient. But not outdated. Even ancient tech respects priority if the math is righteous. Gravimetric analysis conclusion, human physiology 3.9 G clearance normalized. Cadet Kane authorization pending. So not expelled? Drex asked, disbelief rasping his vocal cords without emotional spike. Not expelled, Professor Selen-Wyar replied while turning the pad so it swiveled to position itself before Aria like a contract waiting for a signature she never volunteered. Re-ranked. Re-recorded. Re-read. Protocol didn't break. It evolved. Aria smiled only slightly, an expression so tiny the AI didn't even register it. Drex did. Evolution? Drex scoffed. Species-based privilege decks are ancestral. They were, Aria said, pen finally still in her hands, not because she wanted to fight, but because the pad required interpretation differentiation from physical contact variables. Until someone from a treaty-poor origin authorized treaty-grade equations. Krell asked her first. Not Drex now. How does Earth model curvature without core assistance? We model it like oceans, Aria answered, gaze steady, not hostile, not dramatic, simply precise, and pointing to the diagram glyphs on the lecturer board in the infirmary reflection showing cosmic strands overlapping with Drex's horns shadow ironically inside the curvature differential 2.2 G compensation bubble now stabilized. From below up. The aliens looked at her differently now. They didn't gasp loudly again. They were intelligent species too. They simply understood gravity differently now. Drex breathed deep, the class certificates pinned automatically into his profile by his hearing summons now labeled diplomatically, not biologically. Recovery status, physiology fit, socially unproven, diplo hearing pending. Drex frowned, recognizing the difference. The station wasn't mocking him. Alien society was. And humans? Drex finally asked softly, no longer performing, only seeing his desk 2 chapters away now socially relocated to an external diplomatic hearing zone deliberately inefficient afternoon lecture hour, species-based privilege ceding lost territory by AI adjudication now irreversibly, what do they value? Aria capped her pen slowly, clicking it quietly, because quiet was how protocols survived. Respect. But only after results. Drex's pad tray beeped its final diplomatic acknowledgement. The hearing summons began full burn. The class outside muttered, Earth transfers don't overreach. They overwrite. And at the end of the sphere, one final protocol line registered through Xenon Blue Glyph Analytics, smooth, precise, rewritten not by noise, but consequence. Underestimate humans at your own desk jurisdiction risk.